I found my wife's secret affair with her boss, which she hid for years, but the real betrayal was discovering she planned to transfer $250, $0 of our family inheritance into her sister's name. Now she's claiming I'm the selfish one for fighting her over our property and the money. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, let alone find out she was planning to steal our inheritance and give it to her sister. Honestly, the whole thing feels like a bad soap opera, but here I am, living it. It started with small things, little lies, weird excuses, nothing out of the ordinary at first. But then the signs started piling up, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. I should known something was off when Sarah started acting distant, hiding her phone more than usual, and brushing off questions like I was bothering her. She'd snap at me if I asked about her day or if I looked a little too curious about her emails. But the real bombshell dropped when I stumbled on her phone one night. I'd been suspicious for a while, so I decided to check her messages. Nothing invasive, just a peek. And what I saw made my stomach drop. There was a string of texts between her and her boss, Mark, that were anything but innocent. They talked about secret meetings, flirty jokes, and plans to meet up after hours. The worst part, they'd been doing this for years. I couldn't believe I'd missed all of it. I'd always thought Sarah was just busy with work, but this was something else. She'd been lying to me for so long, sneaking around behind my back, and I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. That night I stayed up, going through her emails and texts, trying to piece everything together. I found receipts from hotel stays, secret phone calls, and even a schedule that showed her meeting Mark during times I'd thought she was at work. It was like a puzzle, and every piece screamed betrayal. I felt angry, hurt, and humiliated all at once. How could she do this to me, to us? We had a life, a home, a future. What was all of that if she was just going to throw it away for some affair? I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was that she'd been lying right to my face for years, and I'd been blind. The more I dug, the worse it got. I found out that she'd been planning to transfer a huge chunk of our family inheritance, $250,000, to her sister, Lisa. I couldn't believe it. That money was supposed to be for our future, for our kids, for retirement. And she'd been scheming to give it all away without telling me, hiding it in her sister's name. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and called me selfish for fighting her over our property and money. She said I was overreacting, that I didn't understand how much she needed Lisa's help, how she'd promised her sister she'd do this for her. It was like she was trying to justify everything, even as she lied through her teeth. I couldn't believe how cold she was. She had this bitchy attitude, like I was the one causing problems. She kept lying, spinning stories about how she was just working late, how Mark was just a boss, how I was paranoid and insecure. But I knew better. I knew she'd been cheating on me, and she'd been planning to steal our money all along. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to scream at her, but I also felt this sinking realization that the woman I loved was gone. She was replaced by someone who was selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything we built for her own benefit. I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her again, call her out, maybe even expose her to her boss, Mark, and her sister. But another part of me just wanted to walk away, to cut my losses and start over. I was supposed to be the one in control, the one making decisions, but now I felt like I was just a pawn in her game. I couldn't believe I married someone who was capable of this level of betrayal. It's like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, and I knew my life was about to change forever. After discovering all this, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept replaying the moments I missed, the signs I ignored, the lies I believed. It was a crushing realization that everything I thought was real, my marriage, my future, the trust we built, had been a lie. I was angry, but mostly I was hurt. How could she do this to me, to us? I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs or if I was just too naive to see what was happening right in front of my face. I knew I had to confront her again, but I didn't want to do it impulsively. I needed a plan. I started gathering everything, screenshots of her texts, the emails about the inheritance transfer, receipts from her meetings with Mark. I couldn't just accuse her without proof, especially since she was a master at spinning stories and lying her way out of everything. I also reached out to a lawyer friend of mine to understand what our legal options were if I decided to fight for the inheritance and possibly take legal action to block her from transferring that money. My wife, Sarah, was a piece of work. She's always been a bit of a bitchy, entitled, and really good at twisting things around to make herself look innocent. When I confronted her, she played the victim card hard. She called me paranoid, insecure, and accused me of spying on her because I didn't trust her. She said she was just working late, that Mark was just a friend, and that I was overreacting. She even had the audacity to say I was selfish for fighting her over our property, as if I was the one trying to steal something. She started crying, fake tears rolling down her face, and told me I was ruining everything because I was jealous. That's when I saw her true colors, the manipulative, bitchy side that I'd never really seen before. She kept insisting she loved me, but her actions told a different story. I could see right through her lies. She was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own instincts, but I wasn't falling for it. I knew she'd been lying for years, and I knew she was planning to take everything from us, our money, our inheritance, even our dignity. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I'd always been the guy who believed in loyalty and honesty, and now I found out the woman I married had been cheating and scheming behind my back. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake at night, thinking about how she'd been sneaking around with Mark, probably having sex with him while I was at work or asleep. The thought made my stomach churn. I felt sick knowing she'd lied so effortlessly, and that she'd planned to give her sister a fortune that should have been ours. But I also started thinking about what I needed to do. I couldn't just let her get away with this. Not only was she cheating on me, but she was trying to steal from our future. I decided I'd fight for the inheritance, no matter what. I'd get a lawyer involved, figure out how to block her from transferring that money. I also decided I'd confront her again, but this time with a clear plan. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover. If she thought she could manipulate me and walk all over me, she was dead wrong. The hardest part was realizing I had to consider my own emotional health. I couldn't keep living in this chaos, this betrayal. I was furious, yes, but I also felt a deep sadness. I'd loved her, believed in us, and now I was faced with the reality that she'd been playing me all along. Still, I knew I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let her ruin everything we'd built. I told myself I'd do whatever it took to protect what was left, even if it meant tearing everything apart first. That's where I was, ready to fight, but also broken inside. I just didn't know how much more I could take before I shattered completely. After I gathered all the evidence and made my decision to fight for the inheritance, I started planning my next move carefully. I knew Sarah was good at lying, so I had to be smart. I reached out to a lawyer I knew who specialized in family law and inheritance disputes. We set up a meeting and I laid everything out: her secret affair with Mark, her plans to transfer the $250, $0 to her sister Lisa, and her constant lies and manipulations. The lawyer told me I had a solid case to block the transfer, especially since I could prove she was planning to steal money that was legally ours. Meanwhile, Sarah kept pushing her narrative that I was just paranoid and insecure. She kept telling me I was overreacting, that Mark was just a colleague, that I was jealous. She threw tantrums, yelled at me, called me controlling. She even accused me of spying on her, which I didn't deny. I had no choice but to keep an eye on her because I knew she was hiding something. The more she everything, the more I realized how deep her deception ran. She was so good at lying that even her own family didn't suspect a thing. One night, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I confronted her again, this time with my lawyer on speakerphone. I told her I knew about her affair, about her plans to transfer the money, and that I was going to stop her. Her face turned pale, and for a moment she looked like she was about to explode. Then she shifted gears fast, putting on this icy, bitchy smile and telling me I was ruining everything, that I was selfish and controlling. She said I was just jealous because Mark was better in bed and had more money. That was when I snapped. I told her I wasn't going to let her steal our future, and I warned her that if she tried to transfer that money, I'd take her to court and make damn sure she paid for her lies. She started crying again, but this time it was different, less genuine, more manipulative. She said she loved me, that she'd never cheat or steal from me, and that I was just a jealous husband who didn't trust his wife. I looked her in the eyes and told her she was a liar, a cheater, and a thief. I told her that I was done trusting her, that I'd find a way to protect what was ours, and that I would not let her ruin everything we worked for. That was the night I realized she'd been planning this for years. Her affair, her scheme to steal the inheritance, her lies. And I knew I had to act fast before she could do any more damage. The emotional was brutal. I kept going back and forth between rage and heartbreak. I loved her once, believed in us, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman willing to destroy us for her own benefit. But I also knew that I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to protect myself, my future, and the little bit of dignity I still had left. I decided to put my foot down and fight for every penny, every piece of our life she was trying to take from me. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but I refused to give up. If she thought she could cheat her way out of this, she was dead wrong. I was done being the naive husband who trusted blindly. Now, I was the man who was going to do whatever it took to stop her. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and sleepless nights. I was all in on protecting what was ours, and I could see Sarah's true colors starting to show even more clearly. She wasn't just angry or upset, she was panicked. Every move I made, she countered with lies or accusations, trying to spin the story to make me look like the bad guy. She insisted that the inheritance was hers to do with as she pleased, and she called me controlling and possessive for wanting to stop her from transferring the money into her sister Lisa's name. But I wasn't having it. I had all the proof, screenshots, emails, receipts. I handed everything over to my lawyer, who then started the process of filing legal notices to freeze the transfer and prevent her from moving the money. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I was finally taking action, but dread because I knew Sarah was capable of anything to get her way. She'd already lied so much, I wondered what she'd try next, maybe even try to hide the transfer altogether or come up with some new scheme. Meanwhile, Sarah's attitude shifted from bitchy to outright hostile. She started calling me names, accusing me of being paranoid and insecure. She said I was ruining her life, that I was trying to control her because I was jealous of Mark. She told me I was selfish for fighting over our property, like I was the one trying to steal from her. Every time she said those words, I felt a surge of anger. How dare she call me selfish when she was the one betraying me, when she'd been planning to take our inheritance and give it away. It was unreal how she could spin it all to make me look like the villain. That's classic her, lying, manipulating, twisting everything around to justify her actions. I stayed firm, though. I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself but for our future. I also started secretly recording some of her conversations, just in case she tried to deny anything later. I knew she'd deny everything, even if I had the proof, but I wanted to be prepared. The more I saw her act out, snapping at me, crying fake tears, accusing me of controlling her, the more I realized she was desperate. She knew she was losing control, and her bitchy side was coming out full force. The emotional toll was intense. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd let her get away with so much for so long. I loved her once, believed in us, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who was willing to destroy our future for her own gain. I kept thinking about the life we built, the dreams we had, all of it crumbling because of her lies. That's when I made up my mind I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I had to fight, no matter how painful it was. I owed it to myself, to our marriage, and to the future I still wanted to salvage. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Sarah was stubborn, and her bitchy attitude made her dangerous. But I also knew I had to stand my ground. I couldn't let her manipulate me or steal what was rightfully ours. I was ready to go to court, to fight for every penny and every piece of the life we'd worked so hard for. Because at the end of the day, I realized that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to fight back. And I was done being the naive husband who trusted blindly. From now on, I was going to do whatever it took to make her face the consequences of her betrayal. The court date finally arrived after weeks of back-and-forth legal battles. I wasn't sure what to expect. Sarah had become more aggressive, more bitchy, and her lies had only grown more elaborate. She called me controlling, paranoid, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. Honestly, the court hearing was a nightmare. Sarah showed up looking defiant, her usual bitchy smirk plastered on her face, trying to act like she was the victim. Mark was nowhere in sight, but I knew he was probably hiding behind her lies somewhere. My lawyer laid out all the evidence, text messages, emails, receipts, and explained clearly how Sarah had been planning to transfer the inheritance into her sister Lisa's name without my knowledge. I could see her trying to spin it all, but the judge wasn't buying her bullshit. The judge asked tough questions, pressed her on her motives, and looked at the evidence critically. Sarah's face turned red, then pale, as she realized she'd been caught red-handed. She kept insisting she was doing it for her sister's financial security, that I was just jealous and paranoid, and that she deserved to do what she wanted with her own money. But the judge saw through her lies. The ruling came down in my favor. She was ordered to freeze any transfer of the inheritance and to provide full transparency about her financial dealings. I felt a wave of relief, but also a deep sense of anger. She had tried to steal everything from us, our future, our inheritance, even our trust. And now she was basically forced to stop. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a fighting chance. Sarah's reaction was classic. She threw a tantrum, calling the judge biased, calling me a controlling asshole, and claiming I was ruining her life. She stormed out of the courtroom, bitching and yelling, trying to make everyone believe she was the victim. I just sat there, exhausted but relieved that I'd finally taken a stand. It was a victory of sorts, but I knew the battle wasn't fully over. She was still her manipulative self, and I had to stay alert. The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotions. I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was gone, replaced by someone who was selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own gain. I also felt a strange sense of guilt, like I'd let her get away with so much for so long. But mostly I was angry. Angry at her lies, angry at her betrayal, and angry at myself for trusting her so blindly. I realized I'd been naive, too trusting, and that I'd let her manipulate me for far too long. In the days that followed, I started to piece my life back together. I focused on legal steps to ensure she couldn't take that inheritance, and I began the process of healing. I knew I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could control my future. I made the decision to file for divorce to finally free myself from her toxic, manipulative grip. It was a painful choice, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't live in a constant state of suspicion and betrayal anymore. I deserved better. Looking back, I realize I learned a lot from this nightmare. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even if it means tearing your life apart first. I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know I change the past. All I can do now is move forward stronger and wiser. I hope anyone else going through something similar finds the strength to stand up for themselves. Because at the end of the day, the truth has a way of coming out, even if it takes years. And when it does, you have to be ready to face it head on. After everything happened, the court ruling, the divorce papers signed, and the realization that I'd been played, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with deep sadness. It's hard to put into words what it's like to find out the person you trusted most in the world was capable of lying, cheating, and scheming behind your back for years. I thought I knew Sarah. I thought we had a future. Turns out, I was living in her carefully constructed lie. That kind of betrayal leaves scars, but it also teaches you a lot about yourself. I've come to understand that trusting blindly is a mistake, but it's also a lesson in resilience. I had to rebuild my life from the ground up, financially, emotionally, mentally. I started working with a therapist, not just to process the betrayal but to learn how to trust myself again. I realized that I'd been so focused on protecting her and the marriage that I ignored the warning signs. I was too eager to see the good in her, even when everything pointed to the opposite. But now I see things clearly. I know what red flags look like, and I refuse to ignore them anymore. The inheritance fight was just the tip of the iceberg. It exposed her true nature: selfish, manipulative, and willing to destroy everything for her own benefit. But it also made me stronger. I've learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours, even if it means tearing apart everything you once believed in. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it was painful. In the end, I gained clarity, a sense of justice, and a new perspective on what I want in life. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my future. I've started saving again, rebuilding my confidence, and reconnecting with friends and family who supported me through this mess. I've also learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did. It's about freeing myself from the anger and bitterness that threatened to consume me. I don't hate her, but I definitely don't trust her anymore. I've accepted that some betrayals are so deep they change everything, and that's okay. Because I'm moving forward, not looking back. To anyone who might be reading this and going through something similar, trust your instincts, protect yourself, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Sometimes, the truth comes out in the most brutal way possible. But in the end, it's better to face it head-on than to live in denial. Life is too short to waste on people who don't value honesty and loyalty. I've learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm grateful for it. Because now, I know what I deserve, and I refuse to settle for anything less.